Right, so interested in what the market's done really since failed attempt to reverse this move to the downside. We've got our second failure to continue the big, broad downtrend. All right, so this thing. And so because there was, so that's the big trend in play, that big downtrend. And then counter to that is the first attempt to break it, which failed up here. And now we're in the second attempt. In the market, we've utilized this on a daily basis, this whole first mouse, second mouse, this trade that I hit down here, that was the second mouse against the skew, but at a key area, hence why I went in. So when something happens once, it's meaningless because it's not enough data, but once it happens more than once, then traders pay attention. So therefore, overall, we're looking to see whether over the coming days, because it's not going to happen in one session, is it? If we can make our way up and have another go at this. So we want to have a look at what's in the way, obstacle-wise, as we continue moving on up to the upside. Let's get rid of that. The last time we were up here, we did a lot of business. So what we talked about today through the initial part of the session is expect grinding moves, as you might recall, which is what we got. Right, so the market would move up slowly, then you get like a two-sided environment for a while, and then it'd have another go, and then again. And that happened twice, and then we got that push to the downside, which just was a great opportunity for lots of players to come in and pick off the market here at the lows. So we're not in the rip aggressively to the upside mode, we're in the now up in this grinding area. Buyers stepping in at higher and higher levels. See this here? That's what I just missed. See all that selling that happened? See that? So here's the market comes back. So this is the first time they're offside. Second time, they don't want to stand the pain, and there it was. So there, that's a trade I missed. We blow that up. I'll show you the gap that filled. See the gap? So the market came and closed the gap, and you're basically trading that move back to sort of closer to VWAP for the close for the Hong Kong session. Dollar hasn't covered, by the way. Clock's against us though. I mean, it's not the greatest area, is it? You got to get through, despite there being a genuine opportunity to get long. Doesn't change the fact that there's some traffic, VWAP, transition, intraday transition. So there's a lot of crap in the way. And the new session, end of Hong Kong. So there's lots going on. I still see that from my perspective, for me, that's a lost opportunity, but I would have just gone, bugger this and pinged it off. But this is the type of thing to get used to for trading in high acceptance, grinding stuff. Right, so underpinning this, of course, is that view bottom right. We have a skew to the upside. Short term, we've got a skew off monthly, and we're almost at that point. It seemed like such a long way away, didn't it? But where our low-hanging fruit area is. So I wouldn't be too concerned about not being in this first bit, because that was when London came on board, and you probably saw all the quotes go bananas, all sorts that can happen during that period. So we're free from any data for 60 minutes. So likely to see a reaction at CME VWAP. Surprised if we just went straight through it, but right now at 27, look at all the selling. 27, 26 and a half that just came in. So plenty of selling here at the close of yesterday. So it's more about where the close was, I think. And just above here is where there's that group of buyers. But the good thing is, this is all short inventory here, all the way down. So we've seen a little bit of covering. Some have obviously seen that like edge of where all the selling is, which is just here, and gone, okay, well, that's a good spot to get short. I don't think it's a good spot to get short, but they do, because we saw people get short there. So there's plenty of fuel to take this higher. What's great about this too is, let's look at the potential trap. So that's the Asian session. See all that business. Now, some of the rationale for entering short up here is leaning all of that on that acceptance. Now, we've often seen, not all the time, we often don't get the opportunity to use it to our advantage, but because we're on the cusp of it now, we might be able to find some of the rationale for these sellers. So part of it is that buying up there. Well, another reason is going to be this big area of acceptance. In a move to the upside, I don't really care about getting on the edge of the selling. That's the sellers are the biggest group to lose. I don't care about the Asian session here, because no one cares about the Asian session trading this period. So I've got a couple of things here to work in our favor, but what we don't do is just predict, because we'll just get belted. That's too easy just to see the opportunity and then go in. Like, Then we've got to wait for the conditions to look right. Ample selling inventory. The delta, look at that. See all that selling that's coming off this high? Plus all the selling that's already there below us. Plus you've got all of this. The more time we spend here no longer going up, the more selling is going to hit this area. Look at the spread and the quote, keep putting pressure on the sellers. So 27 is where we've got a big chunk of a group from earlier today. That's them there. So that's a big chunk of sellers, which is the edge of where all that bigger picture seller from a couple of weeks is. See how the sellers are gravitating to where the other sellers are? These guys built here because of the existing inventory. These guys here are building because of this. That's how we end up with those big pockets of just buying and just selling, because people copycat each other. So we know where the low-hanging fruit is, but the market's not presenting the trade at the moment, is it? Also, these numbers are spinning around a lot, so that's indicative of who's actually present, not terribly many other bigger players. So I reckon this is the hardest part of trading, getting that execution, timing that correctly. Because what tends to happen is you can see the market moving and you go, oh, I've missed it, oh, I've missed it, I've missed it, and you can get in a shitty area. And then all of a sudden you get taken out and then you see this ideal setup. So I think how many times I have to have more than one go. That's why I feel I'm qualified to say it's difficult, because I get it wrong the first go many times. All right, so we can look at this as a couple of failed attempts to move lower, but we're definitely in the ultra short term, a little range. I'm going to bang an order in. Plenty of acceptance here. All right, out of our box. I mean, this is our spot, so we've just got to find something to work with. So we know that you don't chase these vertical spikes. You just get immediately thrown to the sharks. Okay, we've got a steep move, so I'm happy to play this if I can get a move here, get filled, keep my wrist tight. Okay, so the bids come back there at 26.5. So first attempt, second attempt is where I went offside, and think of that as the second mouse gets the cheese. No acceptance at that second attempt down. That's where all the bids evaporated, but no one sold into them. Not in the clear yet. Look at that horrible poking machine bid and offer action. So what have I got on my side? Remember 27? 27, I've got the offside shorts. All right, now, is that excellent? Not really, because there's no business done on that. That was just a market maker doing that. It can come straight back, can't it? Now, what do we say about grinding price action? Look for the deviations. So I have to take some. No, I had to take some money there. So what happened when it pushed up? The market accepted it. You could see the business going through, but that's an unknown until after the event. What we saw when they took it up here is it just came straight back down again. So if you have a look in the distribution, one of the things that I was working with, so where these failures are, where are they? They're at this seller reaction at the second deviation, because we're in a chunky area of acceptance. Tends to grind a lot in these scenarios. Remember when we talked about the low-hanging fruit? How's the change in the behavior above this area? It just happens to be that it's at CME VWAP. It's not because of VWAP, and this is totally what we saw every trade to the long side earlier today. Reversion at the second deviation. It's not seeing a lot of selling coming in here at this area. Look where we are and look what's above us. An enormous area of selling. See that? We're getting a reaction there. All right, I've got flat because all I can see is a gazillion failures. I know what's above us, it's that big seller, so I'm just going to wait to see if we can continue on. Why give back the offer? So I took partials, gave it a red hot go. You can see in the DOM how things are spinning around, so you know who's in charge. Lots of two-sided trading, because just check out the size of the profile. Look at all the business in the profile that we're doing at this current level. When you see this behavior, not every time, but what happens more often than not when you see this? There it is. Pushes to the downside, doesn't it? Because these very shallow moves, so here's, what are we talking? 71.31 to 71.29, a 2 basis point pullback isn't typically sufficient. So this is just knowing the market's likely behavior purely based on odds. Okay, so we know we're in this big grinding move to the upside weekly VWAP. So now I just wait for a new opportunity to get set on the long side again, if and when it happens. And so all of these little specifics that I'm talking about, that's the detail that you want in your playbook trade. How far can it pull back or not pull back? What's most likely? We're not trying to predict the future. We're just trying to play odds. So you could have just ripped to the upside. That would have been great, but it's not what happens more often than not when you see that behavior. So imagine if I had an expectation that this thing was going to keep going like some of the other trades do. I'm loading up all the way like I talk about doing, not in this environment. That's the sort of where you come unstuck because you're choosing the wrong environment. Because why? You don't know your instrument. No, you don't have depth to your trading skills. I'm just waiting for the next opportunity to get long. I don't really like what we've got, but we might be getting closer. So lucky for us, not every day is met with these types of, like, imagine if every trade was like this. It's hard yakka, this. But today hasn't been like that the entire day. That long trade off the bottom was beautiful. And that's where the opportunity was to add and allow a runner. This isn't it. And it's that understanding of knowing trading deep enough to know when to do it and when not to do it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is doing exactly what most often happens. That's why I talk about just do what the effing market tells you to do. But you've got to learn its language, otherwise you don't understand what it's saying. Put another way, just surrender to what the market is offering you up. So you can't be sitting here going, this should be going all the way up here in a straight line and I should be able to add like crazy, because that's imposing your own wants in the market. That's how trading works. Very difficult to not do it all the time, but there's degrees to which people do it. So that's what the attraction is to most traders, is to just keep working at that. Everyone's seen sport where the other team gets caught up in the result, right? So it doesn't matter what competitive field you talk about, it's applicable to everything. All right, so no acceptance, but a couple of failures here. That's cool, but we still haven't really got out of this little zone here. It's like another little area. We spoke about this in prep today, and during the course of the day, bit of a grind, sideways, bit of a grind, sideways. Typical for high acceptance. So no, we don't buy at the top here, because that's just horrible most of the time. Not every time, there will be times when it works. So here is a little bit of buying at higher level, but do I really want to front run all that high acceptance? Not particularly. So remember we talked about multiple points of evidence. So if I was just going off this area, oh yeah, beauty, here we go. As I said, doesn't mean it can't do that. I'm just based on what happens more often than not. Buying into this is not really a sensible move. We'd be better waiting for it to get above it. Remember 33 is where that big, humongous area of selling is. That around here somewhere, there's a huge bit of selling. So the low-hanging fruit trade is if it gets through it. No acceptance on that push up, see? 7 lots got traded from here to there on the long side and 2 got sold. What's most of the business up here? Just of recent. It's all long. There it is. How are we going to get through that seller? Piqued my interest a little bit more now because we're starting to, it's not a lot, but you're starting to see a little bit of business come in here, which is cool. I remember what I said before, like 7 lots or something. Well, there's clearly more than that now. A little bit of selling coming in. Right, so here comes some acceptance now, some covering. It's a shame it's right up at the edge of this deviation. But the other thing too is we've got huge selling inventory there. So they're not going to cover unless they're offside, most likely. I mean, some of them won't cover at all. But whoever is in there with tight risk management will probably need to get offside before they think about covering. So that's what I am looking for. Evidence that they start to cover. That might have been a little bit of it, just that 26 there. But you can see how we've started to accept pricing up here now. And we're kind of out of that box. So let's say we just come off a little bit, put a couple of failures in here, and then move. That would be something that I'd be keen on trading. Oh, here we go. That's what we wanted. See, this selling, there's covering, but there's also some selling, short selling taking place, increased selling. Meanwhile, the Dow has pushed to the upside. It was flat not that long ago, like neither up or down. Okay, no real selling there. Yep. Oh, that looks like someone just went, I'm going to use that opportunity to get out. See that smart cover there? So I made the assessment that that was someone who knows what they're doing on the wrong side of the market, but managing their trade well. So when they covered, I went long, because I know that there's more than just that guy. So remember, pros are patient, amateurs jump in. Reverse that when it comes to risk management. As soon as that given the opportunity, they went, bang, get me out. Long onside, right? So taking cues from the market. Now, here's where I'm going to give this a little bit of room. Why? Because that big seller, 33, 32 and a half, we kick up here and there is suddenly a heap of fuel to take this further. Does it mean it will go? I've got no idea. It's going to be up to the buyers and sellers battling it out. So unfortunately the Dow's just come off a little bit, so that's not encouraging. And this buying sort of continued with relative ease, right? Someone acted quickly here, and then someone was able to get out of a fair whack there pretty easily. Basically, 70 lots was easy to cover, no pressure. What's that do to my position? Well, the prices come back. Now, they're not all out because remember, there's a huge ton here. It's in the lap of the market gods here as to what happens. I'll try to keep abreast of what's going on by watching. One thing that's not going to happen is I'm not going to get belted. Decent size bid at 31 and 31 and a half, BS at 32 and 32 and a half. Plenty of short selling from the Asian session that's around this area. It's not so much for the European session. What are they all in there? They're all in on this stuff here, right? All of this high acceptance. That's where all of that business was done. That's why it's high acceptance, because you're talking about big areas, big volumes there. Now, it didn't work, but the market maker really dropped the bids down there in an effort to try and get some selling in, and it didn't happen. So why are they doing that? Well, the market's not pushing up, is it? So it needs a catalyst in the form of maybe some short sellers who get in around this area. It's unfortunate that all of that long inventory went through with ease. They all got out really easily. Why? Because a whole bunch of traders were happy to take the other side. So this is market makers here is trying to get some selling. Now that might result in something that looks like that. Comes off more aggressively. Like what we saw over here. Fortunately, that's that 28 lot there, but I'd be happy if we saw a little bit of selling coming in, not all this buying. So one or two things can take us higher. First, we get some selling in and maybe we get a little bit of selling pressure and everyone goes, oh no, and you get fresh shorts to squeeze. Or a buyer just comes in and lifts this mother, right? And if the market maker sees that buyer, because remember, they can see everything that comes in before it hits the market, they'll rip all of these quotes. They'll shred them. Now, do we know which one of those two things is going to happen? I couldn't tell you. I've got no idea. We've got that to deal with. A session upon us. US pre-market. Testing again with the selling up here. A couple of quotes higher up are starting to move around. Just keep an eye on some of the offers, because if you start to see them shade down, then you can use that as a bit of a heads up. Flash away. All right, so when they're flashing, again, try and think about why they're doing it. So take your attention away from something else. Don't look at the flashing, look elsewhere for anything moving. Trading grinding moves is hard, isn't it? There's a decent cover. Now just basically, the deal here, just I'm not going to be adding into a new session coming. I'm just going to look to try and milk this thing as far as it can go. And then that's it for the day. So the hardest trade of the day was the last one by a long shot. The thing is, if you can get through this, the stuff that's more straightforward, you absolutely tear it to pieces. Look at that bid, you see it there, 160 something or other. So there's some BS going around, market making. This is what you'll see into the change of a session. So you don't know what can happen here. It's expansion too. So I've taken some off because we've got a couple of failures and it's expansion and the clock's against us. See how all the liquidity got pulled up above? See all that? See how the market stalled? So there was a heap of liquidity sitting here where this box is. I remember we've got all these windows to try and look at as many signals as we can to help with timing. When to take money, when to get in, when to get the friggin' heck out, when to go back in. That's basically what we're doing all day. So have a look at how the liquidity got pulled and the failures and then the market rolled. There's data as well pending. The theme remained intact, second deviation. So front-running data, that selling is no messing about either. There's 100 lots there. I'm flat. Didn't turn out to be this huge, absolute U-Butte trade. But we have plenty of good ones. So take the good and the pretty ordinary ones, put them all together and it ends up okay. If you're still in a trade thinking, well, I hope this keeps going, you haven't been watching the market. I'm going to call it a day. There'll be another trade. Like there's always more buses, but like I've caught enough buses for the day. Any move from now, to me, it's a completely new, yes, we're trading this move, right? This one-off weekly VWAP. But the next time I buy, it's a new trade. And I'm not doing any more of them today. I gave that every opportunity. I took some out here. I watched what's going on and went, yeah, nah. But ironically, the hardest trade of the day is definitely at the end of the day. But as I said, if you can work through that, the really straightforward stuff can absolutely tear it apart.